Yeah, I thought I'd just do this quick video, really short. So, Bay Class was on. I must admit, I don't watch the podcast. Never have. Not personally for any reason. I just don't. I just don't enjoy listening to PoE balance, which is ironic because I'm about to talk about it. But honestly, I find I don't really enjoy listening to the podcast whilst I play, and I'm not really going to sit down at any other time and listen to it. So I don't really have time to fit it in, and it just doesn't seem to fit around me, and I don't listen to it. However, occasionally we'll dip into the podcast when it's online, or somebody will tell me about something. So this is just literally going to be a 2-minute video. In the recent episode of Bayclast, we were told it's easy to get. This is a quote. Now, this is just why I want to explain why I don't bother getting involved in Reddit really anymore, why I don't sort of make lots of PoE videos, because it just bores the tits off me. Basically, I did a quote. You downvoted on Reddit for a quote. It's easy to get depth solo 600. That was what one of the podcast members said, right? And I said, that's a quote from a full-time player with no concept of what people actually want, which I stand by. I stand by my point. I wouldn't have said it if I don't stand by it. And I believe Imperium came back on from the podcast and said, so obviously I'm going to get downvoted when a content creator replies. For those who stopped watching at that point, 1 minute later, we pulled up the ladder, and upon checking the stats, we immediately walk back on that position, which is great. But this is the point I was trying to make, which I guess on Reddit, what you need to do is you need to make your point, give an example and explain it like you did in high school. You have to do your P. Point, example, explain. Right? So, depth 600, there are only 74 characters in the entire league. There's only 74 people in the world that have got to depth 600. Now, my point wasn't to go and shit on the people doing the podcast. My point, maybe I should have explained it more clearly, was the fact, even though you went back on it, the fact people thought that was achievable and thought that was even a concept that was possible, that is my issue. Well, not issue, but that was my point. And I spoke to Rich J Money last night for quite a while, and we have a few of the same things, like a few of the same ideas. And I just feel like when I watch these podcasts, like, people are not represented. I'm not saying I could do a better job, and I wouldn't want to do the podcast. I wouldn't want to, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to go from that angle. I'm just saying that when I tune into these things occasionally, this is what goes on in my head and the thinking that happens. I sit there and I think, wow, how does a group of people believe 600 is achievable? Even though it's good, they went back on what they said. Because a lot of people wouldn't do that. A lot of people wouldn't respond and they wouldn't fact check. So that's great that they're doing that. But the fact that they initially thought it was possible, to me, is just like, man, like, what else does this podcast, or these, not so much the podcast, but people in the racing scene, in the pushing scene, whatever you want to call it, the people that really, really try hard in PoE, what else do they believe? Because to me, I could never imagine the average player coming out with a statement, it's easy to get solo depth 600, even though they went back and corrected it. It's the fact that they said it, I'm just like, how did they come up with that? It'd be the equivalent of me saying, guns have never killed somebody, and then fact checking it, and then 2 minutes later being like, oh no, guns have killed people. Anyway, let's carry on. I was wrong. It's kind of like, but what made you think that? That was my point that I was getting at. So when I play PoE, I'm just enjoying it. I'm doing my own thing, and I've just been feeling recently, not so much, I'm not aiming this at the people on the podcast or anything like this. I feel, for me personally, when I play the game and I read the challenges and I see the content that's been created, I'm just like, man, this content ain't for me. That's what I feel like. I feel like they're going down a different route, and it's like they're almost trying to become this balanced esport type of game, and the fun of it is gone. the memorable moments for me has gone. Like, I remember when we fought Dominus for the very first time. It took us 45 minutes, and none of us knew what we were doing, and we were like, fucking hell, this Dominus fight is crazy. The last crazy fight to come out, or the last piece of content that I thought, whoa, was Uber Elder. I was like, Jesus, like, that is really tough content, and that's content that's good for me, because you can make it spawn. So if I want to attempt Uber Elder, I can fight it, and it stays on your Atlas each day, and your Atlas doesn't move, which means the average player, even if they don't play many hours, they can slowly work their way up to Uber Elder and get the encounter to happen. There's no real RNG in it anymore. You can make the encounter happen. Whereas some of these new, how do we word it? Some of these new encounters, like is he called Aiul boss of Delve? You can't make it happen. You can't collect tokens. You can't force the encounter. It's just pot luck. So I feel like that's a very bad thing when it comes to player retention, because to me, player retention is being able for somebody to sit down and work on a personal goal and it not be affected by other things such as massive RNG. Yeah, RNG is always going to play into account, even with Uber Elder. Sometimes it pops right on, sometimes it takes a few maps, But some guy comes home from work and he thinks, right, I'll do some tier 16s, right, Elder's starting to spawn around it. I'm going to go to bed now. Tomorrow, do a few more tier red maps, right, it's now on the Guardians. I'm now going to work on getting the influence on there. Or I'm going to get some splinters and I'm going to fight Zoff, right? But with the new encounters that seem to be happening, it's just pure RNG on top of RNG. It's like you've got to get... No one has the same mine. So not only do you have a different mine, you also have all the layers of RNG when it comes to getting the thing to spawn. So yeah, it's not me attacking the people on the podcast. They've made it looks like they've made 28 episodes. I wouldn't have the time or patience to set up a 4-man video call with thousands of people and watching and do a podcast and and invite guests on and all that. I wouldn't do it. So I'm not knocking the podcast or the people on it. I'm just saying from my perspective, when I hear quotes like that, I think, damn, like how could you even imagine 600 is easy? Like, are you that out of touch? So what people tend to do is when I say, are you that out of touch, they will think that because that person holds that opinion, I'm attacking the person holding the opinion. I'm not. I'm looking at... the guy's got the opinion in his hand, and I'm saying, I believe that opinion was stupid, and how can you hold it? I'm not knocking you as a person. I'm saying that I'm looking at your opinion from all angles. I'm saying, right, how's he formulated that opinion? What's it based on? And I'm not... That's what people seem to get confused at on the internet. I don't shit talk people on the internet for no reason. I haven't just decided, oh, this podcast shit, I'm going to shit talk it. No. I was just saying that, how do you come up with 600 is easy, regardless of whether they backtracked or not. But, whatever.